At the service gate, the palace SUV idled with its hazard lights blinking once, then steady. From the rear window, a small hand struck the glass, soft, frantic, leaving a faint print that shouldn't have been there. The driver stared forward. No escort call came through. The guard checked the log. A line was missing. He didn't move. The engine hummed. Inside, someone was crying. The service gate sat at the far edge of the inner courtyard, a place designed for efficiency rather than ceremony. No flags, no press, no witnesses. The stone beneath the tires was older than the monarchy itself, worn smooth by decades of controlled movement. Vehicles passed through here only when everything had already been decided elsewhere. The royal guard stood at his assigned mark, posture neutral, hands relaxed, eyes active. His shift had been uneventful, routine patrol checks, radio confirmations, the quiet rhythm of a palace operating as intended. He knew that rhythm well, too well. That was why the SUV felt wrong the moment it came into view. It rolled in slowly, engine steady, headlights dimmed for internal grounds. A black vehicle, standard fleet issue, unremarkable by design. The hazard lights blinked once as it stopped, then settled into a steady idle. That detail registered immediately. Hazard lights were not used inside the secure perimeter. Ever. The guard did not step forward. He watched. The driver kept his hands on the wheel, eyes forward. No acknowledgement, no hand signal, no radio call requesting clearance. The escort vehicle that normally preceded any royal transport was absent. The courtyard remained otherwise empty, the air still, the faint hum of the engine carrying farther than it should have. Then movement caught his eye. From the rear passenger window, partially obscured by tinted glass, a small hand struck the surface. Not hard, not once, twice. Fingers splayed, then withdrawn. A child's hand. The guard's gaze sharpened, but his body remained still. He counted his breaths. 1, 2, 3. Children were moved through the palace regularly, between wings to lessons to private gardens, but never through the service gate without escort, and never without prior notice logged and confirmed. More importantly, never with visible distress. He raised his wrist slightly and checked the time. Then the log tablet mounted at the gate console. The last authorized movement had cleared 22 minutes earlier. A staff transport. Signed, verified, closed. There should have been another entry. He scrolled back, then forward. He checked the internal timestamp, then refreshed the feed. The system responded normally. No error flags, no pending approvals. A line was missing. The driver remained motionless. The hazard lights continued their steady blink, 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 an unintentional metronome marking the moment stretching longer than protocol allowed. The guard stepped forward one pace. "Identify," he said, voice level not raised. The driver did not respond. That more than the missing log triggered the first formal deviation in the guard's mind. Silence was not a mistake. Silence was a choice. He moved closer, stopping at regulation distance from the driver's window. Close enough to see the man's profile now, jaw set, eyes fixed straight ahead, face pale under the dashboard glow. The driver's earpiece wire was visible against his neck, but there was no audible transmission. The guard shifted his angle slightly, just enough to catch the rear window again. The child's face appeared briefly this time, small, pressed close to the glass, mouth open in a silent cry before the head turned away. A sleeve wiped at tears. The window fogged faintly from breath. No child cried silently, unless they had learned it was safer that way. The guard's jaw tightened, though his expression did not change. He tapped his radio once, activating the channel without speaking. A standard practice when assessing uncertainty: open the line, listen first. Static, then routine chatter from another sector. No reference to a movement order, no confirmation request coming his way. He spoke quietly into the mic. "Gate 4, unscheduled vehicle present, requesting movement verification." A pause, then, Gate 4, stand by. Stand by meant someone else was checking something that should already have been checked. The guard looked back at the SUV. The hazard lights stopped blinking. That was new. The driver finally turned his head slightly, not enough to make eye contact, just enough to acknowledge the guard's presence. "We're cleared," the driver said. His voice was controlled, practiced. "Open the gate." The guard did not respond immediately. He glanced once more at the rear window. The child was no longer visible. "Movement order number," the guard said. The driver hesitated, not long but long enough. "It was issued verbally," the driver replied. "Direct authority." Verbal orders existed. Rarely. They were always followed by immediate written confirmat. Iron, especially where minors were involved, especially at a service gate. The guard placed one hand on the gate console, not activating it, simply resting there. A neutral gesture, a pause that forced the moment to breathe. "Escort detail?" he asked. "Reassigned," the driver said. "To where?" Another fraction of a second passed. The guard felt the weight of the courtyard settle around him, the stone walls, the cameras angled just so, the knowledge that every delay was being observed by someone, somewhere. He was aware of the risk in slowing this down. He was equally aware of the risk in letting it pass. The radio crackled. "Gate 4, Control said. We're seeing a provisional authorization. Stand by for confirmation." Provisional meant incomplete. Incomplete meant unauthorized. The guard nodded once, though no one could see it. He stepped back half a pace, positioning himself directly in front of the gate mechanism. His body now occupied the space the SUV would need to pass through, not dramatically, not aggressively, simply present. "Engine off," he said. The driver looked at him fully now. His eyes flicked to the gate, then back. "That's not necessary." "It is," the guard replied, "until verification completes." Inside the vehicle, a muffled sound rose, a sharp intake of breath, followed by a suppressed sob. The guard's gaze did not leave the driver, but his hearing sharpened, cataloging every sound. The driver exhaled through his nose, slowly. Then, reluctantly, he reached forward and turned the key. The engine died. The sudden quiet felt heavy. The hazard lights remained off. The guard adjusted his stance, feet planted, weight evenly distributed. He keyed his radio again. "Control," he said. "Vehicle is holding. Child occupant distressed. Request priority verification." The words were precise, documentable, impossible to ignore later. There was a longer pause this time. Somewhere deeper in the palace, decisions were being reconsidered. The guard stood at the gate, unmoving, aware that whatever came next would not return things to normal. The small handprint on the window was already fading, but the impression it left did not. Behind him, the gate remained closed. For now, the wait did not last long, but it felt deliberate. Footsteps approached across the stone courtyard, measured, unhurried, chosen to project control. The guard did not turn until the man stopped beside him. Senior staff moved differently inside the palace. They carried no weapons, but they carried certainty, and they expected it to work the same way. The official wore a tailored dark coat, no insignia visible, no unnecessary formality. His identification was already in his hand when he spoke, angled toward the camera and the guard in one practiced motion. "This delay is unnecessary," he said quietly. "Open the gate." The guard accepted the identification, scanned it, then returned it without comment. His eyes remained calm, observant. He did not step aside. "Movement order," the guard said. The official produced a folded document from inside his coat. Crisp paper, fresh ink. It bore the correct crest, the correct formatting, the correct language. At first glance, it was flawless. At second glance, it was wrong. The authorization number was formatted correctly, but it sat one digit higher than the last issued sequence the guard had seen that morning. The timestamp fell within a narrow window during a system maintenance period when new entries were automatically flagged for secondary review. Minor discrepancies, easily dismissed, easily weaponized. This authorizes immediate transfer, the official said. You are not required to evaluate the context. The guard read the document again, slowly. He was aware of the cameras, aware of control listening, aware that his hesitation was now being recorded not as vigilance but as resistance. Escort detail is missing, the guard said. The log entry is incomplete. The escort was reassigned, the official replied. The child was distressed. Discretion was requested. The word discretion landed heavily. The guard shifted his focus toward the SUV. The rear window was still fogged faintly from inside. No movement now, no sound. Distressed children do not travel unrestrained, the guard said, or without clearance confirmation. The official's expression tightened, not with anger, but with something closer to irritation at procedure itself. You are exceeding your remit, he said. The family has authorized this movement. The guard did not argue. He keyed his radio once more. Control, he said. Document presented, requesting authentication markers and cross-check against maintenance window. The official exhaled sharply. That will take time. Yes, the guard replied. Silence stretched between them. The courtyard seemed to contract, the walls closer now, the quiet more pronounced. The driver remained still, hands folded loosely in his lap, eyes forward again. A faint sound came from inside the vehicle, soft, rhythmic, barely audible, knuckles against glass, once, twice, then stopped. The official noticed it this time. He turned his head slightly, just enough to see the rear window, his jaw set. You are delaying a protected transfer, he said. That has consequences. The guard met his gaze evenly. So does releasing an unauthorized one. Control's voice returned, slower now, more careful. Gate 4, they said. Authorization is valid in appearance. Secondary markers pending. Stand by. Valid in appearance. The guard understood the phrasing. It was an institutional way of saying no one wanted to own the decision yet. The official stepped closer, lowering his voice. You have done your duty. Step aside. The guard did not move. Instead, he adjusted his position by inches, enough to remain directly aligned with the gate controls, enough to make his intent unmistakable. Engine remains off, he said. Gate remains closed. The official's eyes hardened. You are placing yourself in direct opposition to palace authority. I am placing myself in line with protocol, the guard replied, until confirmation is complete. Another sound from the SUV, this time a muffled cry that broke through restraint. Brief, human, impossible to ignore. The guard felt it settle in his chest, heavy but steady. He had trained for violence, for intrusion, for visible threats. This was quieter, more dangerous. The official straightened, smoothing his coat, composure restored. Then you will answer for this. The guard inclined his head a fraction. Acknowledgement, not submission. He kept his eyes forward, his stance unchanged, and his hand close to the radio. Behind the tinted glass, the child waited. And the gate stayed closed. The order did not come down as an order. Control chose their words carefully, flattening urgency into procedure. Gate 4, they said, initiate a systems hold, report status. A systems hold was neutral language. It implied maintenance, not resistance. It bought minutes without accusing anyone of wrongdoing. The guard acknowledged with a single click of his radio and turned slightly toward the gate console. He did not look at the official when he entered the code. The inner locks engaged first, metal sliding into place beneath stone. Then the outer barrier indicators shifted from green to amber. No alarms, no announcements, To anyone watching from a distance, it would appear routine. Containment without confrontation. The official noticed immediately. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Following procedure," the guard replied. He kept his tone even, his movements precise. "Temporary hold pending verification." The official stepped back, scanning the courtyard as if expecting someone else to intervene. No one did. The cameras remained fixed. The walls remained silent. The guard used the pause to observe. The driver's earpiece wire was still visible, but there had been no incoming transmission since the engine shut down. Either the channel was muted or someone had gone quiet on purpose. The guard noted the driver's breathing now, shallow and controlled. Not calm, contained. He shifted his focus to the surveillance feed on the console. Multiple angles populated the screen. Gate 4 from above, the approach corridor, the internal courtyard junctions. Everything appeared normal at first glance. Then he saw the gap. Camera 4C, the one covering the East Service corridor, was live, but its timestamp lagged by 12 seconds. A negligible delay for most systems. Unacceptable for secure movement oversight. He toggled to the redundant feed. Black. The guard felt the shape of the situation change. This was no longer a question of missing paperwork. This was preparation. "Control," he said quietly. "I'm seeing a blind spot. East corridor redundancy is down." There was a pause, longer than before. "That shouldn't be possible," Control replied. "It is," the guard said, requesting audit trail on recent camera access. The official's posture shifted. Not panic, calculation. He glanced toward the SUV again, then back at the guard. "This is escalating unnecessarily," he said. "You're creating a security incident where there isn't one." The guard did not answer. He was listening to the sound inside the vehicle. The child was quiet now, too quiet. The absence of sound carried its own meaning. He had seen that before, in training scenarios, in real incidents that never reached the press. Silence learned under pressure. Control returned. "Camera access shows manual override 30 minutes ago. Credentials pending identification." 30 minutes ago placed it before the SUV arrived, before the gate, before the guard ever had a chance to intervene. Internal. The guard straightened slightly. "Containment remains in effect," he said, requesting supervisory presence. The official's eyes narrowed. "That is not within your authority." "It is," the guard replied. "When a protected minor is involved in systems integrity is compromised." The words were deliberate, each one anchored in policy, each one closing a door. The official stepped closer again, lowering his voice. "You're making assumptions." "I'm documenting observations," the guard said. A sound came from the SUV, soft, tentative. The rear window lowered an inch before stopping, blocked by a child safety limiter. A small face appeared in the gap, eyes red, searching. The guard turned fully now. He took one step toward the rear door, stopping at a distance that respected both protocol and presence. "It's all right," he said, not as reassurance but as acknowledgement. "Stay where you are." The child's gaze fixed on him. A small nod followed. Then, deliberately, the child raised 2 fingers and tapped them once against the glass. A signal. Not random, not instinctive, something taught, something meant for someone trained to notice. The guard felt his pulse steady. The decision space narrowed. He keyed his radio again. "Control," he said. "I have a confirmed distress indicator from the child, initiating elevated protection protocol." The official's composure cracked, just slightly. "You cannot do that," he said. "I just did," the guard replied. Around them, the palace remained outwardly unchanged, stone, shadow, quiet. But within the contained space of the gate, lines had been crossed. The guard held his position, aware that from this point forward, Every action would be measured against consequences that extended far beyond the courtyard. The containment was no longer temporary. It was necessary. Elevated protection protocol did not announce itself with sirens or raised voices. It narrowed space. It slowed time. It forced every movement to justify its existence. The guard shifted closer to the SUV, stopping at the marked limit painted faintly into the stone. He angled his body so the rear door remained in his peripheral vision while his primary focus stayed forward. Presence without provocation. Protection without touch. "Control," he said, voice steady. "Request permission for visual welfare confirmation only. No transfer." The reply came after a pause that suggested internal disagreement. "Granted, maintain distance. Document everything." The official took an involuntary step forward. "This is unnecessary," he said, sharper now. "You're upsetting the child." The guard did not look at him. He raised one hand, palm open, toward the rear door, slow, deliberate. The driver hesitated, then unlocked it with a muted click. The door opened only as far as the safety chain allowed. The child sat rigidly against the seat, knees drawn up, hands clenched in the fabric of their clothes. Tear tracks marked the cheeks, already drying. The eyes lifted immediately to the guard, not to the official, not to the driver. Fear, yes, but also recognition. The guard knelt slightly, lowering himself to the child's level without crossing the threshold. He kept his hands visible, empty. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "Not comfort, confirmation." The child swallowed and nodded once. The guard noticed details others would miss. No visible injuries. Seatbelt fastened but twisted, put on in haste. Shoes mismatched. A sleeve pulled down over the wrist despite the mild temperature. Training briefings surfaced in his mind, subtle indicators, patterns seen before. The child's gaze flicked briefly toward the official standing just behind the guard's shoulder. The reaction was immediate, body tightening, breath hitching. Then the eyes returned to the guard. The guard followed the look without turning his head. "Step back," he said calmly. The official bristled. "You cannot." "Step back," the guard repeated. The words were quiet but final. After a moment the official complied, retreating 2 measured steps. The difference was immediate. The child's shoulders lowered slightly. Breathing eased. The guard waited. He did not rush the moment. Silence, used correctly, invited truth. The child raised one hand, hesitated, then pressed 2 fingers together and tapped them once against the door frame. The same signal. Then, with deliberate care, the child shook their head. "No," the child whispered. The word was barely audible, but it carried weight. The guard felt it settle into place, not as emotion, but as clarity. He straightened slowly. "Control," he said. "Child has verbally declined movement. Repeat, declined." That phrasing mattered. It reframed the situation from transport to consent, from authority to protection. The official's voice cut in tight. "The child is confused." The guard turned then, meeting the official's eyes for the first time. His expression remained neutral. "The child is aware," he said, "and signaling distress appropriately." He reached up and closed the rear door gently, securing it again. The child did not protest. The eyes stayed on him until the latch clicked. The guard stepped back into position in front of the gate, body once more the barrier. Control's response came. "Quieter now. Understood. Maintain elevated protocol." The official said nothing. His jaw was set, his authority suddenly constrained by documentation and witnesses, by a record that now included a child's refusal. The guard stood still, aware that the moment had passed a point of return. Whatever this transfer was meant to accomplish, it would not happen cleanly now. Behind tinted glass, the child waited. And the guard remained between them and the gate, knowing the next pressure would not be subtle. The pressure arrived without urgency, which made it heavier. A new voice entered the channel, measured, senior, accustomed to being obeyed. The guard recognized it immediately. Directorate liaison, not operational, political. Gate 4, the voice said. You have exceeded your discretionary boundary. The guard acknowledged with a single click. He did not reply until the voice spoke again. This situation is being reclassified, the liaison continued. Stand down, elevated protocol. Prepare to release the vehicle. The wording was careful. No mention of the child. No reference to distress. Language designed to erase what had just been documented. The guard rested one hand lightly on the gate console. He felt the faint vibration of locked mechanisms beneath the stone, physical proof of a choice already made. Request clarification, he said. Reclassification on what grounds? A pause, then, on executive instruction. Executive instruction did not override protective statute when a minor refused movement. It merely tested whether someone would remember that. The guard spoke evenly. Protective statute remains active. Child decline transfer. Systems integrity compromised. Silence followed, not confusion, consideration. The official standing beside him straightened slightly, as if reassured by the new voice. His confidence returned in increments. You've done enough, the official said quietly. This ends now. The guard did not look at him. He keyed his radio again. Control, log all communications. Confirm recording. Confirmed, Control replied. The liaison returned, firmer now. You are creating institutional risk. The guard exhaled slowly. I am mitigating it. Another pause, longer this time. You are a guard, the liaison said, not a decision-maker. The guard's gaze drifted briefly to the SUV, to the fogged window, to the faint outline of a small head resting against the glass. I am a safeguard, he replied. The liaison's tone cooled. If you continue, you will be held personally accountable. The threat was not shouted. It did not need to be. Careers ended quietly inside the palace. So did truths. The guard felt the weight of that knowledge settle, not as fear but as acceptance. He adjusted his stance, squaring his shoulders fully in front of the gate, a visible line. I acknowledge, he said. The official took a step closer. You're choosing a child's misunderstanding over lawful authority. I'm choosing what I can verify, the guard replied. Authority has not been verified. The driver shifted in his seat for the first time since the engine shut down. His hands tightened, then relaxed. He said nothing. Control broke in, hesitant. Gate 4, supervisory presence is en route. The liaison spoke over them. Cancel that. Negative, Control replied, voice steadier now. Request stands. The guard noted the change. Subtle but real. Once more people became involved, Control diluted. That was why silence and speed had been attempted first. The liaison sighed. You are forcing a process that will not favor you. The guard considered the words. Then he responded carefully. I am forcing a process that will leave a record. The line went quiet. In the courtyard, nothing moved. No sirens. No raised voices. Just a locked gate, a silent vehicle, and a guard standing where he was not expected to stand. The official stepped back again, frustration leaking through composure. He checked his watch. Time was no longer his ally. The guard remained still, aware that the next step would require more than words. Pressure had been applied. It had failed. Whatever came next would be physical or formal. Either way, the gate stayed closed. The first vehicle arrived without lights or sirens, rolling into the courtyard as quietly as the SUV had. Standard response unit. Neutral markings. 2 guards dismounted and stopped short, reading the scene before committing to it. The royal guard at the gate did not turn. He felt them arrive the way one feels a change in pressure. He kept his eyes forward, stance unchanged. Gate 4, Control said. Supervisory presence on site. Maintain position. The liaison did not rejoin the channel. One of the arriving guards approached slowly, stopping just outside the locked perimeter. "Status?" he asked. "Containment active," the guard replied. "Protected minor decline transfer. Authorization disputed. Systems compromised." The words were clipped, professional, enough to reframe the S. "Scene." The supervisor's gaze moved from the gate to the SUV, then to the official standing apart, arms folded too tightly. He took in the details: the dead engine, the absence of escort, the cameras locked on amber. "Who authorized movement?" the supervisor asked. The official answered quickly, "Executive instruction." The supervisor nodded once, then looked back to the guard. "Statute." "Invoked," the guard said. "Documented." The supervisor paused. Then deliberately he keyed his own radio. "Control, confirm elevated protection invocation." "Confirmed," Control replied. The courtyard shifted. The official's authority, once assumed, now had to compete with procedure spoken aloud. He stepped forward, voice rising a fraction. "This is an internal matter." "So is child protection," the supervisor replied calmly. The guard felt the moment tighten. This was the line, the one rarely crossed because crossing it required bodies, witnesses, and records. He took one measured step forward, placing himself directly in front of the SUV's path, close enough now that there was no ambiguity. "I am physically denying movement," he said into the open channel, "under protective statute." The words landed with finality. The driver looked up, eyes flicking to the supervisor, then to the official. He did not attempt to start the engine. "Unlock the rear door," the supervisor said. The official opened his mouth to object, then stopped. He nodded once stiffly. The door opened again to the safety chain. The child looked up immediately, eyes locking onto the guard. The relief was brief but unmistakable. "You're safe," the guard said quietly. Not a promise, a statement of fact within the moment. The child nodded, small fingers tightening around the seatbelt strap. The supervisor closed the door and turned to the official. "The transfer is suspended." "You can't," the official began. "It already is," the supervisor replied, "pending investigation." The official's composure finally broke, not loudly, but enough. His shoulders sagged a fraction. The authority he carried had depended on speed and silence. Both were gone. A second vehicle arrived, neutral custody transport, protocol compliant, logged, verified. The child was moved carefully, shielded from view, escorted by guards whose loyalty was to procedure, not influence. The SUV remained where it was, empty now, its purpose undone. The guard stepped back from the gate for the first time since the hold began. He felt the tension release from his muscles slowly, deliberately. Not relief, completion. "Gate 4, Control said. "Containment lifted, stand down." The guard acknowledged. As the gates finally opened, the supervisor lingered beside him. "You'll be reviewed," he said. "Yes," the guard replied. The supervisor nodded. "You did your job." The courtyard returned to stillness. The SUV was escorted away, no longer urgent, no longer protected. The guard resumed his post as if nothing had happened. But inside the palace, processes had been triggered that would not close quietly. And the line he had crossed would not disappear behind him. The gate closed with the same muted precision it always had. No echo, no emphasis. Stone meeting stone, locks settling back into place as if the interruption had never occurred. The courtyard emptied in stages. The supervisory unit departed first, then the neutral transport carrying the child, its route already logged and redundancies confirmed. The SUV was escorted last, stripped of urgency, reduced to paperwork and questions. When it finally disappeared beyond the outer perimeter, the space felt larger, quieter, almost hollow. The guard remained at his mark. Control cleared the channel to routine traffic. Shift rotations resumed elsewhere in the palace. Somewhere inside, doors opened and closed. Footsteps moved along corridors untouched by what had nearly happened. The palace did what it had always done. It absorbed disruption and presented continuity. A senior officer approached without ceremony. No clipboard, no speech. "You're relieved," he said. "Report filed, review pending." The guard acknowledged with a nod. No defense offered. No explanation volunteered. Everything that mattered was already recorded. He handed over his position cleanly, methodically. Weapon check, access transfer, log closure. Each action felt heavier now, not because of doubt, but because of awareness. Every procedure he followed had meaning beyond compliance. As he walked away from the gate, he did not look back. Later, alone in a quiet corridor far from public routes, he paused long enough to remove his gloves. His hands were steady. That surprised him. He had expected something else: tremor, release, fatigue. Instead, there was only a controlled stillness. The investigation would come. Interviews framed as concern. Questions shaped like support. Consequences disguised as process. He understood how the palace corrected those who disrupted its internal gravity. He also understood something else. The child would remember the moment the gate did not open, the moment someone noticed, the moment authority failed to move faster than care. That was enough. The guard resumed walking, blending back into the architecture of service, anonymous, replaceable, necessary. The palace lights dimmed for evening cycle. Somewhere behind reinforced doors, decisions were already being rewritten. But the record remained. And so did the fact that once, at a service gate meant to stay invisible, a guard chose to stand still. And because of that, someone small was no longer alone.